Greetings, mortals, and welcome to this quick spell coefficient, also fire damage, also spec fire, etc. guide to mages.
So, this is a guide for people who want to PvP early, who do not want to just AoE grind in Scarlet Monastery for 15 levels and just waste their entire classic experience, and who want to level up the most powerful mage that they possibly can. So, first things first, the first thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to probably want to spec fire. You can spec Frost if you want, but from a practical perspective, you're not going to do the maximum amount of DPS that you can if you're specking Frost, because Frost is crap. Frost is not crap, but that's beside the point. It's, for the purposes of this video, Frost is crap. Now, so that's the first thing. So here's the basic talents that I have so far, but there's one exception. You want to take Elemental Precision before you take Scorch. Do not be dumb. This gives you 6% reduction to your chance to miss. Misses are, as a spellcaster, show up as resist. 6% hit chance is amazing. It's god tier. Take that before Scorch. Otherwise, just go all the way to Firepower. Once you go to Firepower, then we'll talk. I'm thinking about doing a Frostfire build, going all the way to Ice Block. It's going to be a thing. It's going to be super greedy. It's going to be awesome. Because you can take almost all of the damage talents in Frost without taking any of the Permafrost talents, and then you can have some other mage apply the freeze effect so that you can shatter them with your Pyroblast. Ding! Anyway, so that is the basic gist for talents and what you're doing there. So, let's talk spell power. So, early game, people often suggest that you do not need spell power, and I could not have disagreed more. Even at level 12, you are already getting a 50% bonus from your spell power with a Fireball spell. Your level 12 version of Fireball is already getting a 50% coefficient. That 50% coefficient means that if you stack, 30 spell power, you're getting plus 15 to your Fireball. And that plus 15 to your Fireball when you're using a rank 3 Fireball is pretty freaking nice. That's a pretty huge boost to your damage. And if you get, not that much, then eventually you get to the point where you're like, oh, well, I'm hitting as hard at level 17 as I should be hitting at level 18. And then you hit 18 and you're hitting as high for as much damage as you'd be hitting at 24. So that's all really great and awesome. Speaking of which, I'm already up-ranking by... I'm already up-ranking the next spell. I'm doing way more damage than the level 30 Fireball does. So, at any rate, you get the ability to start dealing damage as if you were a higher level mage by stacking spell power. That's really great. Now, you might think, oh, I need to increase my mana pool so that I can get more damage out. You don't, because if you increase the amount of damage that you do per mana, it's the same as increasing the mana pool, except better. Because when you increase the amount of damage that you're getting per mana spent, then not only do you benefit your mana pool, you also benefit your mana regen. So when you are drinking water, that water that you're drinking has a larger effect. So if you look at my fireballs say that they do 146 to 195 because the tooltip does not update when you're dealing with plus damage. But they actually do, and the minimum there is a resist, they actually do somewhere along the lines of, oh, I can actually just calculate this. Plus 98, that is 244 to, and I'm not going to bother calculating it, 293. So, what we're looking at there is roughly a 50% increase, a little bit more than a 50% increase to the damage of each individual fireball. What that means is that every 140 mana is dealing an additional 50 to 60% damage, which means that this mana pool of 1401 does the same amount of damage that you would actually do with 2100 mana if you didn't have the plus damage gear. So, what that means is that if you're looking at intelligence as a stat, intelligence increases the length of time that you can cast really shitty spells. Now, to give a full, example of what I'm talking about there, you see how much damage this fireball is doing. Holy shit, that's a lot of damage. It seems great. That's awesome. What you don't realize is just how great it is. So luckily, we had another mage who was the same level as me so that we can make a comparison value here. So look at the hits here. We have 126 to 132. Holy shit, that's not a lot of damage. That person is clearly downranking their spell. No, they are not. They are using the appropriate rank of Frostbolt. That is the spell that they are supposed to be using at this time as a Frost Mage. They are hitting for nothing. Now, you'll note that they crit for an average of 259 damage, 8.7% of the time. So let's go look at what our crits do. Oh, wait, our average damage from a hit is higher than that. Our average damage from a hit is 267. So the average hit from a fireball does more damage than the average crit from that person's Frostbolt. And that is, in part, why this meter looks the way that it does. Now, the other part is that they don't have as much damage they don't have as much damage time, they don't have as much uptime. They cast fewer frost bolts despite the fact that frostbolt is faster cast time. Part of that was because they were doing other random nonsense, and part of it was that they were they didn't have as much time on target. Interestingly enough, they had a lot of time shooting with their wand, which is kind of weird. Anyway, that being said, this is supposed to be a quick video. So, basic gist is that if you stack fire damage on a fire mage, it turns out that you do a shit ton of fire damage, and you do so much fire damage that you will literally be out damaging the critical hits of a frost mage with your normal hits. And then you crit things and they die instantly. Not instantly, they die in 4 seconds because ignite, but whatever. The problem with fire mages is that they don't get the really sexy crits that you really want. But there's a couple of important facts. So that's dungeon groups, great, whatever. But PvP though, I need to have my HPs for the PvP. What am I going to do? You're going to hit mana shield, and then you're going to make them explode. And it's just that simple. So, if you're fighting an equal level enemy, and you stack a bunch of Fiery Wrath gear, your Pyroblasts are going to hit for hundreds of damage on a non-crit. But how are you going to get 6 seconds to cast? Oh right, you have Polymorph. So you're going to polymorph your enemy, and then you're going to casually walk away from them, and then you are going to casually cast a Pyroblast, follow it immediately with a Fireball, and then, depending on how much HP they have, you are going to either hit them with a Scorch and then a Fire Blast, or you're just going to hit them with a Fire Blast, and they are going to die. And it's pretty much just that simple to kill almost anyone in PvP, because you do so much freaking damage. This Pyroblast has a 100% modifier for the base damage, and then it has another 70% for the dot after the fact. So, with that plus 100, we're looking at plus 98. That's 286? 286. 286 to 343, right? And then you're adding another 70-ish to the thing. So average damage there is about 300 plus 140. So you're dealing 450 damage non-crit on just the Pyroblast. When the Pyroblast is hitting, that Fireball is hitting at basically the same time. This Fireball, as we've established, is doing a shit ton of damage. Let's look at the Pyroblasts. It's hitting for an average of 310 with my 19 casts of this, apparently. Plus the 140 from the dot. So this is doing about 450 damage average according to my values that I have here. Note those resists. That is why you need this, so that you don't miss. Anyway, so you have, so if you look at the fireballs, you got another 267. That's a shit ton of damage with no crits at all already done. Now, Fire Blast has like a 42% modifier that it gets as well. So these Fire Blasts are hitting for way harder as well. So my Fire Blast hits for an average of 164 damage. So you're casting those 3 spells in conjunction. That leads to doing about 800 damage. And if the enemy isn't already dead, then holy shit, they have a pretty decent amount of HP. Not a surprisingly large amount of HP, but a decent amount of HP. So cast another Fireball and they're dead. It's really that simple. And almost everyone is going to run away from you when they realize that in the first second of the fight, they are below half-life. Anyway, that being said, in addition, people will not help their friends because if you're in a 2v2 situation and you polymorph one of them and the other one is out of, isn't in combat yet, they're going to wait for you to open on their friend before they come in because they don't want a 2v1. So what that means is they're going to wait for you to open on their friend. When you open on their friend is basically dead already, so they just run away instead. And that is the glory. Anyway, that being said, we're now moving on. So, that is the advantage of stacking a bunch of fire damage. Now, how do you do it? So, there are a few things that are important to recognize. Not every slot has the ability to get Fiery Wrath in it. So, you need to not worry about those particular slots. Those slots are rings. Those slots are neck. Those slots are shoulders, boots, and chest. these slots cannot have of Fiery Wrath as a modifier. For every other slot, you are looking for of Fiery Wrath gear. You are not looking for Phoenix gear, which do I have it in my inventory? I do not. You're not looking for Phoenix gear because it turns out that it has less damage on it than you would get from a Fiery Wrath piece of the same level or even of lower level. You just go into the auction house, you search for Fiery Wrath, you don't even care what slot, you just look through it all, and you try to get stuff for higher level than you currently are so that you can get yourself prepped. Once you're in your mid-20s, you should have a full set of Fiery Wrath gear. If you have a full set of Fiery Wrath gear that's at the upper end of the spectrum, then you will have the advantage that you basically don't need to buy anything for quite a while, because it turns out that they don't scale that well between 20 and about 35. So what you'll find is that the upper end of one threshold, it basically increases in batches. So like you'll have like 2 or 3 like levels that all have the exact same capacity. So it'll be like 11 to 13 for 10 levels. Even though they're on different items that are higher eye level, it doesn't matter. It doesn't actually change the amount that they're able to get. So you'll have these large ranges where you can basically just max out the amount that you've got. I currently have plus 98. So there is one thing, though. I mentioned that Shoulders does not have Fiery Wrath, but there is a BOE green called the Magician's Mantle. This is very expensive. This is not how much I paid. So there's no way on earth anyone's going to buy this from this guy because this is completely ridiculous. I purchased mine for less than 3 gold, I think. I might have gone crazy, but I think it was 2.3 gold to pick this up. Is that expensive? Absolutely yes. Is it worth it? Debatable. It's only 5 damage, but I took it anyway because I wanted the Shoulders. So you can get Magician's Mantle at level 20, and that fills up one of your slots that will not have any Fiery Wrath gear, and that's great. The other thing is, if you are a tailor, then you can make, and I don't know why I'm even going to show this because it's not like I actually have it. If you have 190 tailoring, you can make a Robe of Power. Robe of Power gives you another 14 in your chest, along with, other stats that you don't really give a shit about. And if you are level 27, you can go to Gnomergan and pick up your very own Acid Walkers, which have 5+ damage on them. Some of these items will not be replaced for a long time. Other items will be replaced very quickly. So, but as you start approaching level 33, you can fill out those remaining slots. Now, that being said, the wands can get Fiery Wrath. However, they cannot get it early because they don't start out with stats. You don't start getting wand stats until, I think, the mid-30s to 40s, somewhere around that line. But you do actually get a unique staff that you can get as a mage at level 30 that you do for getting a quest that gives you +9 fire damage in that slot. So that's a great thing to have. There's also there are rings that are called, I think, unicorn rings that are BOE high level rings. I think they're in the 40s or 50s in terms of required. And I haven't seen any in the auction house yet. So I can't really tell you much about that. It's relatively early in the expansion. Let's see. So we've got what? Yes. So that is the ring slots. There are necklaces that you can get, but the necklaces that you can get are pretty much going to be like high level, and you don't have to worry about it. So for your next slot, for your ring slots, go ahead and just take whatever stamina or intelligence or whatever you want, up until relatively high level. You'll note that I'm not wearing anything in my chest or foot slots, and that's just because I'm a weirdo. Obviously, if you're doing this and you want to maximize your throughput, you could wear something in your chest and your feet, or you could proudly show that you are a fire mage, and that's why you're so hot. So that's going to be it for this little educational video. I think that we have explained everything as well as it needs to be explained. So thank you everyone for watching. I hope this has been informative for you, and I hope that you will all go around killing people with no shirt. Later, folks.